Yeah. So I'd like to, so the artist of this one asked for a little bit of feedback, which I'm happy to provide. And yeah, so first of all, let's talk about the presentation, because at the end of the day, presentation is a really important part of your piece. It's sort of, you know, it can really make or break your piece. So for this particular one, I asked him to just make sure it was a high quality iRay render, which thank you for getting that done so quickly for me. And also, I would like to see some sort of HDRI in the background. Whilst this does look really cool, so I don't mind the sort of futuristic grey background, but it does complement the piece quite well. I would also just give it a go, try and find a environment that resembles this piece. Perhaps maybe it could be like an indoor area or some sort of futuristic sci-fi sort of environment. And there's a lot of resources online I can recommend. And it would just sort of help bring those materials to life a little bit more. A lot of materials such as metals and really super reflective materials like what you have on here don't behave and look as good as they could if you didn't have a HDRI in the background. So that just allows reflections. It gives your materials something to reflect against, especially metals. If you put a metal in a dark room, it's not going to look like metal at all. It will just appear black. The look of metals is, you know, 100% defined by the specular reflections, which is your environment. So definitely get something in there to reflect, and that will really assist in achieving a level of photorealism with your piece. So once you've got that HDRI in the background, we can then start to look at the materials and just ensuring that they look and behave appropriately. So a little bit of feedback on the materials you have here. So I'm going to be talking about just the base materials without any secondary layers on them. This is obviously quite a clean, fresh looking design. So I guess a couple different things did stand out to me. So your glass, it was something that stood out. I assume well, there's no sort of level of transparency on that glass. I would like to see when you bring that into iRay, plug in a glass shader and just get some transparency happening there. You can still have that tinted reflective look. You can either reduce that transparency a bit just to knock it back so it's still quite dark, but you do want to be able to see through it. Right now, it'd probably be defective. It wouldn't be able to drive because the driver can't see out the windows, right? So definitely get some sort of transparency happening in the glass. And if you can, try reducing the roughness of that glass as well. Right now, it's really rough. It definitely looks like there's some sort of film has been stuck on it, or something really quite matte, which is fine if that's what you're going for. That's fine too, but definitely bring back some of that transparency so we can at least see through that glass a bit. So that's one point of feedback. The next part I saw was the tires. Now the tires, it's hard to say whether this is the environment, whether it's reflective of the environment or the material itself, but the tires do look a little bit dark. Just double check that your base color for your tires are not falling below the value of rubber, which is about 0.03 to 0.04. It's a lot of my students in the past have, you know, whenever they do a black material, it's very tempting to just drag the slider all the way to black. And this is very, it's unrealistic, right? The value of charcoal is about 0.03, and that's the darkest material that you can ever get. So just double check that, and if it is too dark, just lift it up just that little bit, and same with the materials at the front as well. Just double check that they're not falling below that value, and that will just assist in the photorealism a bit as well. Some of your metals, so I think your hubcaps are metals by the looks of the specular reflection. They're quite reflective. Again, I can't tell there's something not quite right about it. Now, it could be because it's reflecting a very dark environment. That could be why it's not appearing as metallic as it should. So once you pop that HDRI in there, you should start to see that metal coming to life a bit more. But also just check the base color of that metal. Metals should not fall below I mean, ideally not below about 0.7 in the base color. You can go darker than that, as obviously it's a stylistic choice. But again, try not to fall below between about 0.4 and 0.5, because if you do, you're sort of starting to create your own materials, and they're no longer photorealistic. So whilst this definitely is sort of a sci-fi van, the aim of visual effects is to still make sure that all of the materials that you create make sense in the real world and could actually be there in the real world. Even if you might not see a van like this, all of your materials still must respond correctly to light and the environment. And it's very important that any material that you choose, that you have a reference image of that material to be able to copy it, rather than just sort of adjusting the sliders until you find something that looks good. Definitely have a material in mind for every single part that you choose to do. Yeah, and lastly, the leather sort of padding on the sides. So let me have a look. Some of this leather padding looks a little bit off. I would just have a look at that again. You might find you might even be able to plug that into your displacement channel to add a bit more character. Perhaps it could just perhaps be the hard edge, like it's quite a big pattern, which I would expect to sort of bump out a bit more. You could try plugging that into displacement and seeing if you get something a little bit nicer, and it could look a lot. It would sort of break up that silhouette a little bit more. And just your roughness as well. It doesn't look like it's got any sort of level of roughness on it. Perhaps if you added a little bit more shine here and there, it would assist in just bringing that to life a little bit more. Yeah. All right. Next, I'd like to just talk about your secondary layers. So right now, I can see that your Kombi van is perfectly clean. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of any wear and tear, and which is fine. I understand that this is a very new piece, so we don't want to dirty it up too much. But I would encourage you to start looking up reference images of clean objects. Just Google the word surface imperfections, and you'll come up with a lot of clean objects that look and appear clean, but as light shines over them, you start to get shifts in the specular highlight due to things like fingerprints and dirt and dust. Objects can be very clean, yet still have that variation in the roughness channel. So I really encourage you to add a few surface imperfections just around the Kombi van, especially in the roughness channel. Perhaps you could add a few little flecks of dirt here and there. In that case, you would then pump that into your color channel as well. But at the very least, get something happening in your roughness map. I've pulled up a few examples of some surface imperfections just on the web just before. So for example, a phone can be relatively clean. Even if you were to look at this at most angles, it would probably be very clean. But as light scrolls over it, you can see these imperfections from the fingerprints and the swipes. They start to appear, and that's because light, when it hits these imperfections, it gets diffused in a bit of a different way due to the residue built up on top of that. So I would encourage you to think of a few different ways you can include just little imperfections like that, and that will assist in some of these really sharp specular highlights, just to add a bit more interest so they're not so perfectly clean. I found a few more examples I'll just pull up. So for example, a floor. On the left this is a CG render by someone. On the left is sort of how our Kombi van's looking at the moment. All the specular highlights are very perfect. And this on the right is just the addition of adding a pretty simple dusty map into the specular roughness. And as the light shines over it, you can see those imperfections really bring this piece to life and make it look a little bit more photoreal. It doesn't have to be as dirty as this. You could contrast that map out so it's maybe a few more sharper reflections, but you can see that it really assists in bringing that piece to life. Another little piece, which was a personal piece of mine, which I'll just bring up. This guy was intended to be really clean and shiny. So from a distance, you know, it doesn't really look like there's much going on. But the minute you sort of zoom in, you start to see little imperfections here and there. So I don't know if you can see that, but little flecks of dirt and dust which break up that specular highlight. No surface is 100% clean. There's no constant value in this. So all of the highlights are broken up by little scratches and smudges. Some in the color map, some in the roughness map. I always like to add some different details into the color map than I do the roughness map, so that it's not perfectly, when light shines over it, it doesn't affect both the color map and the roughness map, but sort of new details. You might see some details under some lighting conditions if they're pumped into the color map, but then as light sort of shifts around it, you'll reveal different imperfections as the light shines over it. So it's always nice to sort of have, yeah, those different details in the two different maps. And then, yeah, so if I just sort of look around, we have little sort of imperfections around the corners, things like that, flecks of dirt and dust. It only has to be very subtle, but that would just really assist in bringing this to life. I assume that this Kombi van would have, I'm just trying to think of how this pattern would have been applied, and I'm going to assume it's probably some sort of wrap or like a sticker that's been applied onto it. It looks like there is little bumps. If we zoom in, oh, I can't zoom in. There are little bumps that indicate that perhaps it is some sort of sticker. Maybe in the corners and on the edges, you could introduce some little bubbling, maybe where the wrap has sort of bubbled out over the corners and things like that. That would add a lot of character to it as well. So as I said, it's not about going crazy with these things, but it's just adding those little details that really add character. It gives your eyes something to look at and something to look for, and it would really assist in just taking this piece to the next level. Yeah, I think that's it for this one. I think get those secondary layers in there, fix up some of these base materials, and make sure you've got a reference for them. And yeah, I'm really keen to see what you come up with as well. So well done. Next, I'm going to be having a look at this one. So this is one that I pulled up today, and the reason I pulled it up was I was really, like, at first, from a first glance, it seems, it doesn't sort of, the colours didn't pop out to me as much as some of the others. However, what did stand out to me in this one on closer inspection was these beautiful secondary layers. I just want to sort of show you guys, walk you through some of the photos of this one that's been submitted. And hopefully this will give you a little bit of inspiration, even for the previous entry, of how to really nail some of those secondary layers. So this is definitely one of the best I've seen in terms of secondary layers. So fantastic. They're sort of, they're subtle, but enough that you can see them close up. You can look at them really close up and keep finding new details, but also from a distance, they also are very appealing as well. So you've nailed that large scale versus small scale level of detail. So really well done on this one. And you're pretty much almost there. I would like to offer a few suggestions to improve this a little bit more and just provide a little bit of feedback. But I also wanted to show this one just for people not knowing how to start off their secondary layers and maybe a little bit unsure as how to go about it. And yeah, I just would like to talk about what is so successful about the secondary layers on this piece in particular. And then of course, ways in which we can improve it and take this to the next level. So the other thing I really liked about this was that he or she introduced the windows on the roof as well. That was really cool. I thought that was a really nice addition. So if any of you have looked up Kombi vans, you'll find that some of them do have these little roof windows, and it's a really nice little addition to the piece. Well done. To me, they look like they're in the model. So well done with that. And also the headlights as well. I would say the headlights probably the best I've seen so far. The pattern on the outer plastic is really successful. It looks spot on. It's very photoreal, and how also you've added emission to the light bulb underneath. So you've really textured this in the way that I intended this to be textured. So well done, fantastic work. But if we zoom out now, I think there's a picture at the back as well. Yeah, so we have some nice pictures of some stickers and things as well. Beautiful. I love the little peeling of the stickers. So where they've sort of peeled off, we can see that too. So that's really cool. Well done. And all of the secondary layers on the body, they all have a bit of a story as well. So we can see that there's dripping of the dirt coming down the back. We have a bit of a softer layer at the back as well. And we also very subtle windscreen wiper marks as well, which was very successful. I did notice them. In terms of some things that maybe we could improve on for this piece, again, fantastic work. There's a few different things that stood out to me. One of them was how shiny the paintwork was. So for something so dirty, I would expect some of the areas to be a little bit broader in the specular highlight and just not so shiny. So I would just double check to make sure none of your roughness values are falling towards 0, because they look like in some areas there could be some perfectly sharp highlights at 0, which is a little bit unrealistic. So just make sure you lift that and make sure it's not too shiny. In some areas, perhaps on the roof here, it's really successful here. You have a beautiful specular highlight, which is broken up by your secondary layers. So big tick for this side bit here and around the front here. Beautiful, well done. I think it's just, yeah, like on the back here, for example, we have this really sharp specular highlight, but we do have these layers of dirt and dust, which are not changing that specular highlight as well at all. And same on the roof here. So just double check that those secondary layers are in fact affecting the roughness channel and increasing that roughness just a bit. Because right now, yeah, that specular highlight is just doesn't quite make sense for the amount of dirt that is sitting on top of that. Otherwise, you might even find that removing some of this dirt and some of this areas to clean it up, removing that from the color channel may look just as nice as well. But just make sure that whenever you have big, broad details like that, that they're marrying up in both the color channel and the roughness channel, and it makes sense for all of the different channels and not just for one. So just double check that for me and make sure that's all lined up. Some of this dirt on the back, so this really soft layer of dirt, you're almost there with it. I really like how it's clearly some sort of dust that is being kicked up from the ground or something like that. Just add, right now it's really very soft. It's sort of a very soft gradual gradient from bottom to top. See if you can add, like, find a dust pattern or something in which you can multiply over to sort of get a little bit more patterning happening in that. Perhaps the pattern could have a few wiping marks where he's tried to clean it, or even if it's just a dust sort of map. If we have a look at the phone again, for example, this is obviously a fingerprint, but in the same sort of principle, the pattern of the surface imperfections has a bit of shape to it and a bit of form. And there's a lot of really soft imperfection maps in Substance Painter that spring to mind when when I think of this. There's a lot of sort of wiping texture maps, which would probably look quite good. A lot of soft. I think there's one called Smudge Soft or something that you might better multiply over. Either multiply or overlay, just something to make it sort of spread out a bit and not be such a soft gradient. I think that would just really assist in bringing that to life. All of your other imperfections have beautiful shape and form to them. Like, we have specks flying at the back of the tire with little leaks and things like that. So that's the only one that I could see, just having a little bit more shape. Some of the areas around here as well, perhaps underneath the roof and around the Volkswagen sign, are potentially a little bit too dark and a little bit too strong. Maybe just knock that down just a little bit. I think it's meant to be like a dirt layer as opposed to a rust layer. So I would just tighten that up a little bit. I can't imagine it would get so dirty and diffuse out so far. So just tighten that a little bit and maybe lighten it a little bit just so it's not so strong. I think that will just help it go along a little bit. The tires were beautifully done. I don't really have much feedback in the way of the rubber. You can tell that the tires have been moving over a dusty floor, and yeah, they've accumulated dust on the outside and they're a little bit cleaner on the sides, which is fantastic. Windows are pretty good. The stickers was one last point of feedback. So if the stickers, you mentioned in your story that your stickers are quite old. They've been there a long time from his travels. I will just fade them a little bit. Right now they're really quite colourful and quite strong. You can see that they've been peeled, so they've obviously been there a long time. Fade them a little bit and maybe add a few scratches. I could imagine old stickers wouldn't be so vibrant and so new looking. So definitely add some imperfections into the roughness maps and reduce the saturation of some of those colours, and that will really tie it into the piece. Perhaps you could even add some extra stickers or maybe just like the glue on the back of the stickers where it's been peeled off. Maybe you could have some little hints that maybe there were stickers once before that have been removed, maybe some little darker areas where the glue remnants have sort of stayed behind. That's just another idea for something you could do as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. So yeah, absolutely fantastic work once again. Yeah. Cool. All right. I reckon that's it for today. So again, we only have, what is it now, January 19. So 6 or 7 more days left of the competition. So get those entries in. It's a really important, it's a really fantastic tool to get your work noticed. As you can see, artists who work in the industry like myself and also my peers as well are going through these entries and having a look at them. Who knows, maybe your entry will be picked up for a random feedback review. And yeah, so it's, again, please get your work out there. I really want to see it, and so does the rest of the judges. So all right, and once again, if you do want a feedback review, please contact me on Discord. I would happily review your work and provide you some feedback, and hopefully that'll help you along. So yeah, all the very best, guys. See you next time. Bye.